Welcome to another episode of Into Final Thoughts. Before we jump into it, I want to tell you to check out our official partner of this season of Into Final Space, Cartoon Crave. Cartoon Crave is an incredible network and news source for all things animation, including Final Space. To learn more, check them out on Instagram at cartooncrave_ and at the Cartoon Crave on Twitter. Now, let's get into the episode. And at the top of this episode, before we get into everything, I just wanted to say a few thank yous. First of all, to Olan Rogers. Thank you for doing this season with me, for completely changing the scope of Into Final Space. This podcast has been an absolute thrill since I started way back in February 2019, and I'm so grateful to you for finding this as a good spot to be able to do what I intended all along, make this podcast a network for fans to really discover this show. I cannot thank you enough for the help, guidance, mentorship, trust, and friendship during this season. I also want to quickly thank our two special guests that appeared on this season, Coty Galloway and Ben Bajelajak. Thank you both for agreeing to sit down and give excellent insight into making the show. To my family for the never-ending support on this endeavor, thank you. Big thanks, of course, to Cartoon Crave for being our partner this season. Their exposure has really helped to grow the podcast fan base and Final Spaces, so we are super grateful to them. And finally, to my fans, Into Final Space would be nothing without all of your support, not only for Final Space, but for this podcast. We're growing steadily close to 15,000 listens to an episode of the podcast, and I have never thought we'd get past one, so thank you for your support by listening, by interacting with me on socials, and by following me on my personal projects. It really means a lot. Now, let's get into Final Space. Welcome to the final episode of Into Final Thoughts, the last piece of content before the long silence we call hiatus or whatever is coming in the future. Who knows? Maybe we'll be back with some cool stuff, maybe another Volume 3-esque fan experience, but for now, we must enter the Devil's Den. It's all led to this. I'm Gabe Jones, and with me to discuss the finale of Final Space Season 3, creator, voice actor, executive producer, and all-around great guy.
Hey, it's me, Olan.
It's bittersweet being here at the end, but we have probably, in my opinion, it might tie for season one, but I'd say one of the best season finales of Final Space in history to discuss today. Massive spoilers, obviously, and make sure you stick around to the end for our last segment of Into Final Lingering Thoughts. For now, Olan, let's get into it. The very last episode.
Let's do it.
What did you want to accomplish going into this finale? Anything different from season one and season two?
Yeah, I think, for the finales, we always tried to do something pretty big, and I remember even before season 3 had started, I really wanted to do a more personal, stripped down kind of finale where there wasn't like, it just felt like, in the previous finales, there was always kind of something that was, very big, a massive fight. Like I didn't really, it's funny when I first thought of that idea of like doing something personal, and then it led to something bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, because that's just how ideas kind of grow and evolve. Like you start with this very inception idea. It's like, I want to do something really stripped down and personal. And then you get to the end of the thing that you write and you're like, that's not stripped down and personal. Like it's actually pretty massive. But I knew what I wanted to do with, kind of the arcs for everybody. And I actually had written the kind of the end finale, my pages of that script of the certain scenes before we even started the writer's room. Yeah. So I knew where I wanted to kind of end it. And it was a bummer to get to the very end of, production and realize that particular vision won't probably ever be seen, or it's going to be an altered version of that. And it's one of those things where you start realizing that TV and your best hopes that sometimes things cannot manifest the way that you want them to, and no matter what you do, like you could plan, you could, and you got to freaking think on the fly. How do I detach myself from something that I see so vividly, and realizing that you're not going to, that's the thing that's not going to be on screen. So it's definitely a process of like kind of give and take and compromise. And then that honestly, if I had to put a definition to doing TV, it's compromise. That's essentially all it is. You're only getting some of what you want. And the thing is, like, you can get excited about certain things and then find out. I mean, and here's the thing. I don't know of any other kind of TV experience. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And this is something that I've been thinking about, personally, as I've been just on this hiatus of limbo or whatever it is that my TV experience has really been one of like, just nothing but like rough seas. It really has. Like when I first had season 1, it was on the heels of that, like that I was still learning. I didn't know what I was really doing in the TV space. It kind of was like just recording something that I didn't know what I was doing. And I wasn't getting, it was just kind of like a weird, like almost lucid dream, because it is a dream and you're like living it and you're like, is this real? I just kept thinking that season 1. And then at the heels of it, you find out, there's going to be this big merger happening at Warner Media. And so season 2 was the absolute most, just like, it was like a hurricane hit the seas, You had a merger that got delayed. People were worried about losing their jobs. They were giving notes like left and right. We had everybody in TBS giving notes. And it was like, how do you address all these things? You can't.
Yeah.
And then imagine around you seeing all these other shows getting canceled. And you're like, freak. I definitely don't want to get canceled. That goes into the back of your head. So it's like, how do you adjust just enough to get past these notes? Mm-hmm. And I remember what a really funny experience. And because it's the last, let's just throw off the guardrails and just kind of talk about experiences. But, I remember in season 2, we were talking about characters. This is actually a funny story. I think I've told this a couple times. We were talking about characters, and we had to come up with kind of like, the new characters that we were going to come up with, like Ash and Fox and Cheryl. And, I think Devo did some concept art, but it was like way too polished. Yeah. And so we went into the TBS, conference room, and it was like all full of executives. Right. And I had a presentation. We were going to talk about season 2 of Final Space, and the head of basically the room was Kevin Riley. And so if you don't know who Kevin Riley was, when HBO Max first launched, he was the head of content at HBO Max. And then when the new guy came in, he got let go. So he was like a big deal, even at TBS. He ran TBS and TNT. So he was at the head of this room. And I remember I thought it would be a awesome idea to hype everybody up, Yeah. So I played Mortal Kombat, the song. Nice. I played Mortal Kombat. Okay. So basically, like, how I do pitches is I get really animated. I stand up, I do a performance. And so we had this like speaker, like I had this speaker that I bought. And so right before everybody was coming in, I was trying to link the speaker up so it actually played very loud. But apparently, like, I didn't realize this, there was a slight delay from the Bluetooth speaker. So I couldn't connect it. And so I just had it play out of my laptop speakers, which, if you've had anything play out of your laptop speakers in a big conference room, it's like kind of loud, but like a little quiet as well. Yeah. It's not low enough for it to be funny, and it's not loud enough for it to be awesome. It's just somewhere right there in the middle where it's just lame, right? And so I had this Mortal Kombat playing at like the lamest level that you could possibly have. And I got up and I start high-fiving executives in the entire room, right? Because I was like, they don't know who I am. I want to make an impression. And I remember sitting down after I high five everybody after my Mortal Kombat, kind of like, it was almost like a UFC fighter coming in, and just like hyping the room up. Yeah. And so I sit down, David's right next next to me, and it's like, let's get into season 2 final space. And we go to the first image, and it was a fox, right? We started talking about the characters, and instantly the Kevin Riley was like, I got a problem with this. And I was like, I've never been more embarrassed in my life to do this funny, just like hyping everybody up, sit down, go to your first image. And because it was too polished. That's another thing. It's like, you gotta, a lot of TV, like making TV, it's not just making the thing. It's the kind of relationships, it's building the relationships. It's how you present the information. And the reason why they bumped on this particular kind of image was because we went in there and it looked like it was going to be like, it looked too polished. It looked like it could be in the show.
Yeah.
And so they were like, I don't like this. If this is a final design, I got to say something. And so when we went back in, freaking dude, I'm talking like 4 months later. Okay. We went 4 months later, and we were kind of like in this weird limbo where we had to pitch Kevin Riley again, the kind of the season 2 of it all. And we went in there and we printed out these packets, and we get, like, Devo did an actual like line sheet of different character designs. And I think they've been posted online and stuff like that, of different Ashes and different Foxes and different Cheryls. And we handed them out. And I remember that when we pitched it this time, he was flipping through the entire thing. And he was like, I love this. I love kind of seeing the different iterations, and I like this one and this one and this one. And he picked it. And then he was like, towards the end, he's like, I got to go, but this is great, And it was after that you really started to sense that there's a lot of kind of like fluctuation. I remember, dude, there was a time in season 2, imagine getting this call where they were like, hey, is there any way that you can change the 13 episodes to 10? And you're like, but we were literally getting animation back, and episode 10 was about to go out. And so so episode 10 would have been the finale. And if you know what episode 10 of season 2 is, it's the Queen episode with Clarence.
Yeah.
And I was like, that can't be it. That cannot be it. So we had to think literally an entire 24 hours of how do we alter this to make a new ending for an episode 10 that would be the finale. And then the next day they called us and said, forget about that. We're going to do the 13.
Just kidding.
And it's like, you're like, what the freak is going on over there? Like it was so stressful because you just didn't know what was happening. Like there was just so many different things and stuff that I still don't, not comfortable talking about, and things that, you dive into those experiences. But, that was season 2 of just like like every day was a new thing, Yeah. And then you get outside of that, of season 2, and they get bought out by AT&T, Warner Media. So Warner Media owns TBS, Adult Swim, everything,
Yep.
And so people start getting let go. The people that we knew, like there's people that are our executives, like, one went to HBO Max, the other ones went to different places. And so we, on the start of season 3, we had no executive. Yeah. We had nobody to talk to. And it was this really weird moment where the show is transitioning to this point where the pandemic hit, and then you're literally having to make a show and having no contact with anybody at any network, and you're just kind of continuing on, And eventually, we were like, hey, is there anybody over there that we can talk to? And they gave us 2 really awesome execs, and they were great. And it's one of those experiences that it's like, that's the Hollywood I know. I just know how, like, the Hollywood I know is like a problem's going to come up always. And I'm going to have to figure out how to adapt to it. And maybe that's just Hollywood, but the funny thing is, I remember talking to David Sachs, and he was like, dude, this is not normal. And that man has been in Hollywood for a long time. I was like, I kept asking him, like in season 2, it's like, is this normal? He's like, well, I've gotten a good bit of notes like this. And I remember I kept asking, like, okay, now is it normal? And he's like, this is abnormal. And then I remember we got to like the end of the pilot episode of season 2. And I was like, is this normal? And he's like, dude, we are in uncharted territories at this point. Like, we don't know where we're at. And it's one of those things where, I think I came to Hollywood at a very weird time.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I'm glad that I went through the tough times, because it kind of made me feel like I've been able to learn more by the tough times. When things are going right, you don't really learn a lot. So it's like I learned a lot by failing. So yeah, it's fine. Did you put it right there? Sorry. 1 second. You can give me a jangling coffee. All right, you're gonna have to cut that out. Yeah, so basically, like, you learn a lot by failing, and I think with my experience, and especially the season 3, when we got to the end and we realized, oh man, we really want to kind of execute this vision, but the problem is we don't have enough money to do that. So I have to adapt on the fly. And I've done that before, with season 2. I've done that with even season 1. And, it's one of those things where, sorry, if you guys hear clicking, that's my dog clicking on the heels, laying down on the bed now. Okay. So yeah, it's something where you have to kind of, adapt on the fly. And with that last episode, the simple thing was that the production couldn't handle it. We were not getting any more money. They were not handing out any more money in Hollywood in general, so really you have to think about as a creator. And this is something for a lot of aspiring creators to think about. And this is something that they don't know. A lot of creators think that, oh man, if I go to Hollywood, I'm going to make my idea and it's going to be awesome. And that's the end of the discussion,
Yeah.
But there's so many things that are in your way, obstacles that you're going to have to overcome. And there's going to be a time where you're going to have to make a really tough decision. And then you're basically, because you're the creator, you're the spotlight of every criticism, of every achievement, of every, you're the spotlight. It gets directed at you in a very intense way, and you'll feel it, especially with your own idea, because it's something that you created, it has a personal connection with you. You feel like almost like it's a kid of yours, like with Final Space, it's, basically because we, the season's done, we had to clean out our offices and stuff. It's impossible not to feel every aspect of what the show is, because it's like, it's something that you wrote. It was 5 years of my life kind of doing, season 1 to season 3. And just that alone, so when you go to your office to kind of, clean everything out, because it's the, end of the pandemic, your office was kind of like in this frozen time capsule.
Yeah.
And you pick up a framed picture of that season 1 of Final Space. You feel it, like you feel like, wow, this is something that means something to me, in a very visceral way. It's not something that it's like, hey, if it was some like IP, I would care about it, but not in the same way. It's like, this is your first thing. So you imagine creating your first thing, and then you have a season 1, and then they come in and say, hey, we're over budget. You got to rewrite this thing and you got to turn it in at this time, or we're going to be over budget and we can't make this thing and we're not getting more money. So you have to make a decision now.
Right.
And it's one of those things where you're like, oh crap. Okay. I have to go in your bubble. And there's no situation where you can write that quickly and miss things, or, have an error, and you have to kind of really think about all this stuff, and you're on a timetable constantly. So it's one of those things where I think there's like this false impression. And even I thought about it, when I was like back in the YouTube days, where I kept, even back in high school, I was like, man, if I just had a budget, I could make that thing. And I would show the world, and it's like, that is right to a degree, but at the same time, you are being faced with these obstacles, and that's a part of TV. That's just what it is. And that's, sometimes you get good things out of it. Sometimes you get a note that makes it better. Sometimes you get sometimes because of the constraints, you're able to think more and think and problem solve a little bit, to a situation that you wouldn't have thought because of the constraints. Right. So there's good and bad, but I just remember season 3, and this is a long-winded way, but hey, guardrails off. The season 3 of it all, it was essentially that, and especially the last 3 episodes, it was that. And I think the one that got the most rewrite was the last one. Yeah. And it was it just hit us one day. Like, I remember it was like a call, like everything was going right. That's when something is bad about that. Yeah. If your productions and everything's going right, you're getting a call at some point. And I remember it was at the same dang time, dude. It was like Ben, our supervising director, got in a massive car wreck. Basically, he got hit like at 90 miles per hour late at night by LAPD was chasing after this guy. He broken bones. He's like in a wheelchair, and he still wants to work and stuff. And you're like, dude, it's like, I understand, but just take a day. Okay. At least it's like, but you can take all the time you want, but he's like, I'm back to work on Monday. It's like, dude, take the time off, heal, Yeah. And it's like, that's when that you're working with really passionate people, and then I remember the next thing, our director, Juan, his dad died, and it hit him right at episode 11, right when he was finishing it. And then at the same time, we get this call, and it's like, hey, Jamfield says they cannot, we're over, like the budget is not making sense. We gotta shrink these episodes. Yeah. And you're just like, it's like, I guess bad things all come in threes, it's like, it's something to kind of, really hone in on. But it's like, how do you adapt to those things, like back to back to back to back? And I think with, for the obstacles that we had, it came out, Yeah. And I think that Ben and their team and everybody, every artist at Jamfield really kicked butt, and they turned in something that, I still look back on, and I'm super proud of season 3. Yeah. Super proud of it,
Yeah. Well,
all right. Next question.
so you basically hit like my first and last question all in the one. So yeah. But I want to spend a bit of this episode basically kind of, closing off certain points of this season, things that we liked, things that we had talked about. But for this next question, I wanted to just dive into the music a little bit and give a final hand to the music team this season. I want to know your thoughts as we closed out with Jake and Dodie and Andrew, and just the amazing performance they gave us this season.
Yeah. And also in there is Casey.
That's right. Yeah.
And you know what? They crushed it.
Yeah.
Hold on 1 second. I gotta let this dog out. Hold on 1 second. Come on. Yeah. Sorry. Okay. I think the music, I think they crushed it this season. I look back on season 1, season 2, and season 3. And I think, there's so much of season 3 that I felt like was bullseyes, that the music was just like, I couldn't think of any other song to fit that spot.
Yeah.
And it's like, there's always a bullseye in every season, but there was like, it felt like they were really comfortable.
Yeah.
And they knew the show so well that they were just kind of like writing these bangers, man.
Yeah.
It was left and right. And then you would have Dodie come in and just write these amazing songs, and they would kind of collab with her and kind of put it into the show's like kind of language. And it just was like, wow. And then Casey, who was just kind of like, I know him because through a lot of different connections, like Coty and Brett, who was kind of the writer's assistant who did the voice of Brett, and basically he knows a lot of the Corridor Digital people and stuff. Like he's worked through there. So my Venn diagram of people I know kind of crosses over his. And, we've always kind of were like, we want to work on something together. And he's like, man, I really want to kind of break into animation. I was like, dude, let's get you to be a guest composer. And the way that I do like composing stuff is kind of weird. And I felt like it really worked for Final Space.
Yeah.
And what it meant, and here's the thing, typically you get one composer, right? And like, you don't get 4 different kind of composers, but what I wanted to try to do was, I was like, you know what? I want to give these artists more time to focus on the things that they're passionate about, so that, if they're writing a song and they're having to do the whole episode, they're not spending the time that they want on the things that they want.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, let's do this then. Let's do 2 composers. And it was really that idea, that whole thing came from the idea that Jake, at the time of season 1, he was meant to be the original composer. He got really sick. He has a chronic illness.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to let go of him, because he helped me sell the show. I mean, I played his music in the pitch, his music was the defining language of what that show was.
Right.
He did the proof of concept. Like, when I hear those piano keys, I think of Final Space.
Yeah.
And so, he connected, me with Shelby, and I was like, let's do this. Like, how about you both do it? And they just would split the composing fee. That's just, it's fine. And, for season 3, Shelby wanted to, pursue other things, which I was like, okay, man, that's like, what do I do now? And I remember I called up Jake and I said, hey, would you be interested in coming back? And like, I knew that he was kind of getting better, his health wise.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, dude. Yeah, I would love to. And I was like, oh my God, thank you. So I got 2 people that scored 2 different seasons. And I was interested to see how that combination worked, because Jake and Andrew have worked with each other on other projects, like a feature or something like that.
Sure.
And I was just kind of curious how these 2 would kind of work together and collab. And then I remembered, there was something, and I was thinking about it. There's something about, the design language of the show and the music language of it that, Shelby brought, which was those lyrical songs. So I was like, man, who do I know? And I remember forever ago, just Dodie, and hearing her music. And I was like, she is one of the most talented singers that I've heard. And there's just such like I don't know. It's like something about her voice. It's just very pure, Yeah. And I was like, I really love that in juxtaposition to this really dark season. Like, if you had that voice in the music language of the show, you would get this really cool, kind of innocent voice that kind of was like very, like, there's something about that voice that's just like, it's piercing, it breaks through so many different things, because it's just such a strong voice. And when we put that, that first song in there, and then in this episode, that last song, I was like, that you can't have a better ending to that than that song, and she would write them these little bangers, it's like, geez, she's so talented. And, Casey, we brought in, cause he probably had the most experience out of Jake and Andrew. And he came from video games. He did Devil May Cry and all this stuff. And I was like, Casey, we would give him the more difficult, like, strings of sequences to do. And so the big sequence that he did was when Quinn was jumping out of the back of the ship and all the moments lost. That was all Casey. He did that. He scored like a 7-minute chunk, and it was just this moment where you're like, oh my God, this guy's like a monster at composing, and every time we would bring him in, there was moments that, and I remember one section he did, and it was perfect. Like, and there's, each of them did like a perfect moment, and I'll tell you what, I'll even tell you what perfect moments they did. So I think that Casey did a couple. One of them was that moment in All the Moments Lost. I think he just nailed it.
Oh yeah.
But there was another moment that's like, it's so obscure, but I love what he did with it. And it's in episode 6 when Tribor and Quattro Nostro go to Tim Belt's, and he starts talking about the prophecy, there's a song under there that makes it feel like they're doing something important, you know? and it sounds so epic for something so kind of dumb, you know, like,
I remember us talking about that a little bit, because you said whatever you had
that piece.
You didn't like the temp music under that.
And he nailed it. Like I didn't give him any instructions on that. He just did that instinctively. And I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. I love this. And then I think for Dodie, I mean, everything she did was bullseye, you know? And I think basically for Andrew, there was a lot of moments that he did. And Andrew's such a chameleon. Like he's a person that he can do anything, you know, he can do any sound. Just give him some time and he'll work it out. And he loves taking notes. He loves perfecting it. Man, there was a couple times where I'm like, it's almost there, dude. It's almost there. It's almost there. And I kept giving him notes. And then finally he nailed it. And you're like, yes, you know, and you, if you can push them and do it in a way that, you know, they're excited to get to that end and feel like they've done something, it's awesome. But I feel like Andrew, there's a couple moments where he surprised me so much of a bullseye moment. And one of them is basically when Bolo rips the sword out of the red dwarf star. There's something so triumphant with that music there. And I was like, we got to use that again. And we used it again in multiple spots. We used it again, I think, when Quinn turns on the hyper-transdimensional bridge in this episode. Like you hear that triumphant Bolo sword ripping kind of moment, because it's like, it's so perfect.
Yeah.
And I think there was another moment that we put it in, and I can't even really remember it at this point, but that I remember that. And he did this really cool sequence where I think it was like a perfectly scored moment. And it was in episode 2 when they're flying on the Kevins and they're talking about, you know, Kevin's talking about the hyper-transdimensional bridge. And there is that, you hear that Final Space theme, and he turned the Final Space theme into an action song. But the problem was that when he first scored it, it felt too like action, you know, it didn't really feel like it had the hope of what Final Space was. And I was like, dude, can you make an action song out of this? And he did. And it just plays like you feel like you're watching Final Space when I watch that sequence.
Yeah.
And that episode, you know, give or take, you know, people have their favorites and stuff, but that sequence I think is perfectly scored.
Yeah.
And then I think, you know, for Jake, he had some bangers, man. He really did, I think, some of his best work on this season. And one of them is the avocado throne room scene. Where he's talking to Lord Commander. He just was like, hey, listen to this. And I remember listening to it and I'm like, what are you doing like right now? Like, what is like, where are you creatively? You know, because you ask these things because it's like he was doing some stuff that you're just like, what are you listening to? What do you like? How are you coming up with this thing? You know? Yeah. And that moment was really, really, really strong. And there's all these other little moments where he would kind of take a scene and add emotion to it in a way that, you know, we weren't even thinking. And it was usually with Quinn and Gary, you'd hear those like little piano cues. You know, when his song comes in, because you always feel something so visceral, like you're like, man, I'm feeling Final Space. And it's just because he knows how to tap into that emotional core. And I don't know what it is about that, but he knows how to do that. And I'm trying to think of like a one song that I really love. Oh, I think a perfectly scored scene that he did, and I told him that he needed to do this scene, was episode 8, the avocado Gary fight. Mm-hmm. And there's one moment in this song that I was like, I knew it was it. And he did it a couple times. The first kind of couple takes he did, it wasn't right. And I was like, dude, this isn't right. And he's like, yeah, I was feeling that. It's like, this is what I'm trying to go for. It's like the tip music was actually pretty good there. And so he's like, okay, give me another stab at it. And he did another stab at it and he nailed it. And there was this one moment that I just, every time I feel the entire scene out of this one moment. Yeah. And it's when Avocado says, you still want anything to do with me? And basically you hear this like string kind of like rise, right in that moment. Like you'll hear it, like you feel the scene because of that one little string that rises up when he puts his hand out, and you're like, man, that's it. It just made everything connect in such a meaningful way. But they killed it. The music, I feel like, is such a huge part of the show and a huge part of anything that I do, because this is how I usually kind of construct my ideas, is that I'm sitting in a car, I'm putting on headphones, and I'm just listening to soundtracks constantly. And I'm letting my mind build scenes. I'm letting it build, kind of a story. And sometimes I get only fragments, and I got to kind of like, okay, I got something there, by listening to that, or I'll get an action sequence in my head just by listening to music. That's the beautiful thing about music, is it's telling stories just without, sometimes words. It's telling you a story. You just got to let your mind, turn on the projector, essentially.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. That's question 2. I'm excited. We got a lot more to get through, though. And we're going to kick it off with a little wrap up on Quinn this season. We get a nice final nod to Nightfall this season. What were your final thoughts as Quinn kind of brushes this line of becoming the next version of herself, or becoming Nightfall?
Yeah, this is something that me and David kind of went back and forth on quite a bit. For me personally, and I think we talked about this in a previous episode. I can't even remember when. Probably. but I think I always liked the idea of having Quinn and Nightfall be two separate people. Yeah. That was how I like things. They are two separate people. Yeah. And David really liked the idea of Quinn becoming Nightfall. And you try to kind of like, compromise on something like that, even though like I was like, David, I don't know about this. I would always talk to him about it. And he's like, no, it's cool. It's cool. It's cool. It's cool. Come on. Like, it's cool. And I'm like, all right, well, let me see how it plays. Let's see how it plays. Sometimes you're just like, let's just see how it plays, on screen or in the script or whatever. Like, you don't really know how it's going to play until you see it happen. Yeah. And I don't mind it, like I don't mind the Quinn becoming Nightfall aspect, but I'm still not like 100% on it, yeah. And I don't know why, I can't explain it. I just feel like it would have been a better story for me mentally, and that's not saying it's bad. It's whatever, but this is just my thought process looking back on it. Just like, I think it would have probably been better just to have Nightfall be this separate character helping Quinn, really transition through connecting with Gary, and whether it be through messages on the ship or, like whatever it is, you could still keep that character alive in a meaningful way and have Quinn still be Quinn, and maybe the final space sickness, maybe there was a different way or different thing. Maybe the chip could have been there or whatever, but like you can see how a writer, like would see like, hey, what if we did this? And their eyes all light up, like what if she gets the chip of Nightfall, and they're like, yeah, like the writer's room just like loves that stuff, and that's like it's almost, sometimes I almost think those kind of like eye-opening kind of moments are a little bit like traps, yeah, because if a lot of the times those are moments that people are thinking of, those are moments that, are we sure we want to do this? Like, let's look down and figure out where this goes, and are we happy with where it ends up? Yeah. And I think with Quinn, I think the stronger story would have been kind of just focusing on solely Quinn and not her turning into somebody that she doesn't really want to turn into. And you could see like I was kind of fighting it a little bit, like every time, like, Quinn, it was like at the top of, I think, like episode 7, she was like kind of worried about turning into Nightfall. And I was like, I want that to be a thing. Like, I don't want this to be a thing where like if we're going to do this, she has to be like, I don't want to turn into this person. Yeah. And I remember it's like, even with the dialogue at the end of the the last little episode, it was like, I kind of did a pass on it to where I remember just changing the language to the next evolution, where it wasn't like, I'm going to become Nightfall. It's like, this is just the next evolution, and people can change, right? There's different evolutions of you as a person, like the person that I was at age 20 is not the person that I am today.
Yeah.
So you do change, you do adapt. So let's say basically me, 30-year-old me, like whatever, 34-year-old me kind of goes back in time and has the same experiences, that Quinn and Nightfall did, right? And basically told my character, my 20-year-old me is going to basically start turning into 34-year-old me, It's not that it's becoming a different person. It's just that the destiny, the chart leads to that point. Yes. But at the same time, it's just the next evolution, like you can be somebody different, but at the same time evolve, it's almost like, almost think about like Pokemon, all Pikachus aren't the same, but it's the next evolution, of a Charizard or a Charmander is, it goes to a Charizard, but they're not all the same, like, that's how my brain, it was like kind of thought about it. It's like, I had to kind of make sense of it in order for me to just kind of be okay with it, And I still to this day, like, I always see holes in kind of the stuff that's up there, and this is like the one kind of thing that I look back and I'm just like, I don't know, I'm just not like 100% on it, and look, I voiced my concerns many times, and sometimes you just gotta collab with your partner, and he likes it, he really liked that the Quinn Nightfall thing, and you know what, it's done. That's what it is. It's canon now.
Indeed. So let's get to the part that everybody's waiting for anyway. The big old conflict here, kind of near the top of the episode with Gary, Hugh, and Avocado going after Little Cato, and we get the competition between Little Cato and Avocado. What was it like, bringing this to a head? And I guess this is the time to talk about your favorite unproduced piece as well.
Like, I don't want to kind of ruin the experience for the international viewers, and that's something that I'm trying to be really mindful of, because they're just at such a disadvantage even when the show was premiering, that they're getting spoilers out there, you're getting kind of all these different things that are kind of being posted on the internet. And so the one thing I don't want is to have what I wanted in this finale.
Well, if someone's an international viewer has listened this far without watching this episode, stop.
So it's like, and to a degree, yes. But at the same time, like, I don't want that to kind of be shared or posted until they have a chance to watch it the way it is.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And then I can post this, basically these chunks of the finale that are really different.
Yeah.
It was pretty massively different because it just couldn't be done. Yeah. Like we were making something that was like feature quality, and sometimes when you get really passionate about where the story's going, the finales are kind of like your payoff. Like anytime you're building something, you get this finale, you get to really kind of put it all out on the line.
Yeah.
And so when you do that, you end up kind of having this really intense episode where production has to look at it and say, how do we make this? And sometimes the answer is we can't. Yeah. And that's what happened this time. And, a lot of that is me still, I guess it's like, for me personally, the way that I write is and I will not write any other way, is I kind of just like write with no kind of barriers up. You know what I mean? Even in my own personal stuff, like I don't try to put a thing like, hey, I can't do that. No, I write it the way that I would want to do it if I had all the money in the world. Okay. And then you can scale that down, you know, but if you write in such a contained way and you put these barriers up, you're kind of like, you know, stunting the story that could come out of it, you know? Sure. And so a lot of the times when, you know, I was writing Final Space, even season 1, I just said, you know what, I'm just going to write the stories that I kind of want to do. And I still remember to this day, like in the episode 1, I kept writing a continuation of action, you know, where Gary's going around the moon, you know, and he's getting just pulled around. And it was like, after the break, we came back to it and he's still around. And David was like, let's just put him on the ship. Let's put him back on the ship. Like, no, we got to continue it. We got to escalate it. We got to keep going. And he's like, I don't know if we should do that. I was like, no, we need to do that. That's what I want to see. That's what I want to make. And I remember he later was like, I'm glad you told me to do that, because it's like, it's a different way of doing things. And like, you know, animation, a lot of times people would just kind of like, they're back on the ship. Well, how did they get there? Well, that's animation. You're cutting out all that kind of stuff that's too expensive to do, and just getting them back on the ship. And I was like, no, I want to do it this way, you know? And so season 1, I really kind of, I'm sure they were like, what is this guy doing? He's like, there's so many backgrounds. He's like trying to make some cinematic, like what is going on? And I tried to keep pushing, really, because that's the only way I could see it, you know? And I think with even, you know, you get to this point, you're just kind of, everybody's wanting to put in their best work, and they're wanting to kind of ramp things up and make an even better thing and better thing and better thing. And you get to a point where it's like, man, the budget was tapped, you know? And there's places that, God, they just have such a massive more budget than we do. Like, just for an example, like, you know, I remember I always see auditions coming in from like Netflix, right? For like voice acting. And what they get paid for voice acting, and this is like the typical norm, $4,000. Okay. $4,000 per episode of voice acting. That's SAG minimum, technically. Yeah. Well, kind of not really SAG minimum. That's kind of like the negotiated thing that actually Fox, give Fox the crap all you want, but because they negotiated with Fox way back when, because of Family Guy and all this stuff and The Simpsons, $4,000 became kind of like the staple, you know, for voice acting, you know. Final Space, we only got about 900 an episode, between $1,000 to 900 episode. The budget was just so, and that's SAG minimum. That's the minimum. And that's just like an example of like, in every degree, in every department, everybody was getting less than everybody around town. You were getting the minimums because there was just the budget, we didn't have the budget. And so a lot of the times we would have artists kind of leave for higher paying jobs. Like Solar Opposites pays double than what we could even afford, you know? It's like there's so many people around you, and animation's growing so much that you have all these people getting bigger budgets, and you're just kind of like, man, you know, let's just try to get through this season. Like, how do we get through this season? And how do we finish this last episode? Because usually when you get to the last episode, all your artists are kind of like starting to fall off, and you're getting less and less people, because it's like a waterfall effect. So you have 3 different teams. And when the team finishes 11, those people go off to their next job. And when people finish 12, they go off to their next job. And when people finish 13, there's only a small amount of people on 13 in our biggest episode. Yeah. So it's like, you try to keep some people around for a couple extra weeks to help out. But a lot of the times on that last episode, it's usually where, you know, you start feeling the fatigue just like what you just did. And you're just hoping to get to the finish line and make something that's good, you know? But yeah, it's definitely a difficult process. And I think that answered the question. I even forgot what the question was. Honestly.
No, you're good. I just wanted to add on to the end of that. Were you at least somewhat satisfied with how the confrontation kind of came to a point with Avocado. Avocado there.
Yes. And the reason why, oh, man, what the freak? I don't want to hand it there. So a lot of the times, I think I am happy with how it played, because you got a very vulnerable Avocado, and the acting on Little Kato just played so well, and almost less was more. The way that I wrote that scene was way more intense. It was like, I saw it for what it was, and it would have probably been one of the more intense things in animation.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if like it could have gotten past the, the level of notes in every facet. Like, we got to the animatic, but not even the animatic. We got to the boards. Like, it was kind of like boards animatic. No, we got to animatic. It was like the first pass on the animatic, and then that's when the jam-filled call came in. So yeah, it was the animatic. And I don't know where the freak that thing is on the server, man. It's like the server's so big. There's like literally for every episode, there's, I think, like, I don't know, 25 drafts of each animatic. It's like, I'm trying to find this thing on a server that's like, has literally every animatic from season 2 to season 1 to season 3. And you're just like, how do I find this thing? It's just, I just don't know anything about these servers. But I was able to find that radio play, and I think once you'll hear it, after the international people watch it, you'll see that it was very intense, and it was, the intensity was probably even more than what you got in what was on there, in the actual episode.
Yeah, and
yes, I am satisfied with it.
Yeah, I mean, a massive congratulations to everyone on the cast. I mean, especially that scene. You, Kuti, Ashley, Steven all just killed it. I think that was
my favorite.
Really fun to watch.
My favorite line that I'm glad actually stayed. It's such a small line, but I feel like the impact of that was very meaningful, and it was just like when Gary said, I'm sorry we failed you, Ash.
Yeah.
And I feel like in that moment, you kind of saw that even Gary knows that he failed, like he, in every which way, like he tried to keep this thing together, and he knows that he failed somebody. And he didn't just feel like, saving the earth. He didn't fail, basically trying to save Nightfall. He failed a person.
Yeah.
And this person sees a villain now. You see what I mean? Like,
right.
Ash sees Gary, Avocado as villains because they failed her.
Yeah.
And I like that. I like that idea, because it's just so, it happens in life so much, dude. Like, one thing that you can say wrong, or one, perception of somebody, and they look at you, and no matter what you say, no matter what you do, you will not win that person over. Yeah. And that's just life. And it's such like it's such an interesting aspect that I like exploring, and I've explored it, try to explore it a couple of times. And I don't think I've like successfully executed it. Well, granted, season 2 was a little bit of a different story when I tried to successfully execute it.
Yeah.
But it, like, I feel like in this, just that idea, I love that idea of just somebody that just, no matter what you do, you're their enemy. You're never going to win them over. And it takes it in. And I think that's just, there's something powerful to that. And there's something like so real to that. And there's something so sad about that.
Yeah.
Because the other side of it, Gary, I don't think hates Ash at all. He wanted to, and this person just hates him. It's like, it's so sad. It's so sad. I don't know. I get sad about stuff like that. Yeah.
And I do want to talk about Ash a little bit more. I want to circle back to her towards the end. But I think we mentioned earlier in the season, you try to give Kevin a shining moment in every season, and we finally got that in the finale. Your thoughts there on that nice little
it's a little moment, and I think Kevin had a bigger moment in the other one,
Yeah.
Because, and this is one moment that I'll say, like, I don't think it ruins anything, because I kind of said it in the previous episodes, is that basically in 11, you end up finding out that the Kevin net is still out there. It's just disabled. In 12, they kind of get it operational. In 13, you were going to see this Kevin net just freaking shred through Titans, right? Just absolutely obliterate them. Like, it was going to be so awesome. Like, basically, as Gary and Avocado come out of that black hole, they're getting chased by Titans and Ash. Okay. And this is the moment I'll talk about this moment. And then this is the only thing I'll talk about the original version, is that they're flying as this Kevin net is shooting like these freaking lasers that are just shredding Titans behind them. And they're just like weaving in and out of these lasers. And then eventually, as they get past the Kevin net, Ash freaking just obliterates the entire wall of the Kevin net. And you just see a wave of explosions, and she freaking goes after him. And it was so awesome. But you're thinking, like, how do you do that?
Yeah.
Like, no money for that,
Yeah.
And it's like, but it would have been so awesome to see the Kevin net activated, and you saw something powerful of what the actual thing that Kevin was, and you would have seen that in such a big way, and then you would have got that moment as well. It's like kind of like a dual moment kind of thing. And then just that Ash moment was just, it would have been awesome, dude. It would have been so cool.
Yeah.
You see just a wave of freaking explosions as she like just obliterates it. I don't know.
Yeah. And we get another little bit of some comedy break in this episode. We get the reveal of Biscuit's Hue project. Do you have any closing thoughts on our Tiger and Hue this season?
Yeah. Biscuit, was the hardest character for me to voice.
Yeah.
Ever. Yeah. It hurt. I think it actually probably did damage to my vocal cords. I laugh about that, but I think it's true. It was so hard to kind of go back in there and do like ADR for the character, because my voice would just like kind of give out.
Yeah.
And I think, the character, I never really wanted to voice the character. It was just one of those things that, because I'm so animated and kind of how I tell stories and how I present things, I did a voice when I presented season 3 before the pandemic, a Biscuit, and it got laughs. And then David was like, "You got to do it." It got laughs. And I was like, freaking dang it, man. I don't want to do this. Can we see if we can get an audition? And then the pandemic hit and we couldn't get any auditions. And then I was stuck with Biscuit. And here's another thing, dude. Here's another thing. Well, I actually shouldn't say that, probably because I'll get production in trouble. But yeah, anyway, so I voiced Biscuit. And yeah, you see the Hue project, and there's so many different ways that I wish we could have visually articulated that in a better way.
Yeah.
And I wish that even the Hue design that we got, I wish could have been done in a better way. But that was so hard to do, man. I think at the end, we were just like, everybody was so burnt out,
Yeah.
And I think that's like the best design that we got out of doing multiple design passes for Hue, and we love the idea of kind of, making him a little bit blockier and kind of more intense looking. But yeah, it's one of those things that it was even cooler in the original. It was even cooler when he lands. It's an even cooler moment because, oh man, I'll just have to wait. I'll have to wait. I gotta bite my tongue. I gotta bite it.
I guess when we're on our comedy string, we get Tribor and Quaternos's last triumphant return to open the bridge. And looking like we'll get home with their help. Any last notes on these two?
No, I always love that idea that that no matter what, Tribor's listening,
Yeah.
And for better or worse, some people hate Tribor with a fiery passion. And there's some people that like him, and there's some people that are, so on him. But, he pops up every now and then, and he popped up in this moment, and I felt like it kind of worked. That's pretty much it.
Yeah. All right. And then going back to a more serious note, we get Gary's "I love you" to Quinn. What's your thoughts on their relationship at the end of season 3?
Yeah, this is like such like a this was such a hard moment because I know what the original was. And I can tell you the what I was hoping we would have gotten with it in this particular in the episode. But when you hear the version of what was in the previous script, I felt like that played in such a better way.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because I wanted it to very much mirror in season 1, episode 10, when Quinn said she was not coming back. And so I think you can kind of see a little bit of like the cues there that the idea is that Gary thought he was not coming back in the original version. Yeah. But in this version, we still love that idea. And the way that we had to kind of adapt it on the fly is that he felt like they were not going to get out of this.
Right.
And it still worked, like it still worked, but it was so much more powerful in that original version. And you'll hear it, dude. You'll hear it. Like it's powerful in that version. Yeah. And it's so sad. And I feel like the version that we have, it still works, and we were able to put like a joke there and stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's so hard to kind of analyze each little moment because where my brain goes is like, man, it was better in the previous. It was better than the previous. It's better than the previous. And I feel like I'm a little bit of a broken record at that point. But I genuinely think it was those moments played better. Now, a lot of the times, our biggest disadvantage on Final Space, and I'll say this with a fiery passion, is our time limit.
Yeah.
Like 21 minutes to do the show like this. It just, back in the day, like back in 2016 when we pitched just that was the norm. 21 minutes. There was no animation literally out in the world that had a TV format that was over 21 minutes. Yeah. Not one single show, not one. It wasn't until streamers came along, okay, like Netflix, and they started buying animation, that they were like, hey, you don't really have to adhere to this format. You can make it longer if you want. And then you started getting all these different formats of episodes. And then you have Invincible coming out. That's 45 minutes. And you're like, oh yeah, the show's format is like, for this particular show, I think hurts it, Yeah. There's some shows that I think it works in its advantage, because they just are better in that way.
Yeah.
But imagine Invincible 21 minutes. Dude, no way. Couldn't. It just doesn't work. So it's like there's some, I think, shows that work in that smaller format, and there's some that work in larger formats, And I think with a larger, I'm talking about just a minute 30 seconds, an extra minute 30 seconds would be life altering to Final Space. We would be able to let so many moments breathe. Okay. Yeah. We would be able to actually have so much more time to do certain things. But it's that's one of the biggest disadvantages. And I say that because the I love you part got trimmed down in this original version. It was longer. It was impactful, in the original radio play, which I have, I'll say it again. I have it, so it's I think that's the one thing that I think in that particular moment that probably hurt that was, and people don't know. That's the thing. That's why I don't want to kind of talk too much about those particular moments because I want people just to experience the way it is on screen. And then, hey, let's let's dig into what the other version was, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
for sure. And kind of here on the end, once again, bringing Ash back up, she's obviously very, very powerful at this point and powerful enough to beat Mooncake as we leave him behind in final space. Why Mooncake, and what made you come to this decision to leave behind Little Green Ball Friend?
Yeah, this was like a really difficult choice for me, because it's like Gary and Mooncake, I always kind of look at them as like kind of a boy and his dog.
Yeah.
And I think it's in this particular moment, I always kind of was like, something's going to have to get left behind. Yeah. And it felt like, and here's the thing, there is another part of this in the original script that me and David constantly fought over. Like he wanted it taken out, I wanted it in. He wanted it taken out, I wanted it in. And I thought it would have been pretty awesome, Yeah. But it's one of those things that, I mean, I feel like it's a good next step for Mooncake's chapter, because it just felt like what else is there for Mooncake other than being cute and saying chookity?
Yeah, for sure. And I guess coming up there on the end of the episode, you have this incredibly haunting final scene with Dodie's song, of course, and Invictus released upon the universe. And we started this podcast talking about consequences in episode 1, mm-hmm. And I guess the question is, what has our team squad done?
It's definitely a very eerie ending.
Yeah.
And it's like it's so hard to think about that, that particular kind of ending, because it's like if it is the final ending. I just remember in the last few days when we were kind of unsure, it's like you start kind of hearing, we weren't hearing anything. And the only thing that we could really do was I didn't want to leave these characters stuck with poison. Maybe there's a way, because if they're poisoned and they got Invictus and they're outnumbered, they're toast,
Yeah.
But I felt like, let's just get rid of that,
Yeah.
And I had more story for that, I really did, even in the finale, and I think with the way that this ended, the only thing I could do, in case this is just the final moment, the final words of the show is what have we done?
Yeah.
That's it. Then I don't know. I didn't want to see those characters stuck with that poison.
Yeah.
I couldn't bring myself to kind of watch it, probably years from now,
sure.
If it is the end and say crap, what a gloomy way to go, but it's still gloomy, but at least they got a fighting chance, But yeah, that's that. I don't know. It's one of those things that I always get kind of bummed out when I think about it a little bit, because, I don't know what those next moments look like. Is that the end? Is that it? Could there be more? I don't know.
Sure.
But what I do know is that for season 3, I think it was a cool ending. I think it was whoa, we're in the next chapter of the fight. If it's the ending of the show, that sucks.
Yeah.
There's nothing I can do about that. It's because you don't know about these things, and the way that Final Space worked throughout the years is, dude, there's just so many shows now in animation with different places that just get picked up for 2 seasons a pop,
Yeah.
Or they get the pickup, so early. And we tried to get, TBS to bridge gaps and stuff like this. And what the bridging of the gap means is like, okay, when we're writing scripts and we're in production, there's a gap where if we started writing still in production the next season, this is what Rick and Morty's doing. You basically are able to kind of keep things moving, Yeah. The problem is, season 3 came at such a late point that it was like the pickup for that. It was like, oh man, like season 2 got picked up really early.
Yeah.
And then season 3 got picked up really late. And now, I mean, if there was even a season 4 pickup or whatever, it would be just like, crap, it's going to be a long wait. So you don't really get that chance to think ahead, in a way like this. Like you are kind of stuck in the thing that you wrote basically 8 months ago, before it got recorded, before it went into Animac boards and all that stuff. And then it got designed, and then the animation came back, and then you have the episode. Like there's no way you can go back and change that.
Sure.
You're kind of stuck with it, And so if there was a way to kind of, if they had picked up, multiple seasons, it would be a different story. It would be like, what would that look like? And, we would have been able to kind of, adapt if it was the end, but we didn't know that, so if it's the end, it's kind of a bittersweet kind of moment where not even bittersweet, it was bitter, it's like,
yeah.
There's nothing really sweet about it. I guess Doty's music, you get that, but it's like, and it does look beautiful. But yeah, it's one of those things that you can't plan for, you can't expect, you can't hope for, but if it happens, it happens,
Yeah. And I think that's it. That's the end of Final Space for now. The close of another chapter. And thank you, Olan, for telling this really incredible story. I remember I texted you after that episode, that finale, and I said, be proud, be very proud. And I absolutely stand by that. You really crafted something amazing this season.
Yeah.
Just want to say congratulations.
Yeah. And thanks for, and I'll say this to you and, just all the fans, but like, thanks for just being along for the ride. It's been such a learning experience for me. And not only that, but such an emotional one. That's like, cause this is something that I, believed in with all my heart. And, I gave it all. I remember, back in, May or whatever, I can't even remember when it was, I was still waiting. I'm still waiting. But it's like you hit this point where like there was nothing left in the tank, I had nothing else to give. I had saved nothing for myself, mentally, physically. There was nothing else. Like I had given it all. And that's a very scary spot to be in. And I would have only have done that because of the support that all of you have given, that, you guys actually have been on the journey with me, everybody that's watched the show from overseas to, everywhere, Netflix to TBS, to here, to everywhere, just the whole process has been such an incredible journey. And it's been literally like, I keep thinking about this and I just get like, where's the time gone? Half a decade.
Yeah.
Half a decade of my life, I've been literally working on Final Space. That's insane to me. It's just such a slow moving train. And before you look back on it, you're like, whoa, it was slow moving, but I was going at like 100 miles per hour.
Yeah.
It's like, I really got you're like, where's the time gone? And I met some incredible people along the way. David Sachs, Rosa, Tobias, Ben, Devo, like the list goes just on and on and on and on. And, the people in Jamfield just always crushing it. It's been really awesome to see artists get passionate about something that you've created. It's like so bonkers to me. It's like, why? Like, why? And, we can always go on and on about like, was it flawed? Was it this? Was it that? Show me one show that isn't flawed down to its absolute core. Like, we're all just trying to make things that we're passionate about.
Yeah.
And we're never going to get it right. We're never going to get it perfect. But as long as you're trying to make something good, you won't win everybody over. That's not the goal. The goal is just to try to tell stories and inspire people and have somebody feel something. Yeah. And I think that's what we try to do with Final Space is, when you're sitting at home and you feel something, those are moments that you feel like you expressing emotion and you're getting that out of your body is a good thing. Like, you want to watch, and that's the beauty of like television and art and music and everything like that. It's like when you feel something, like you're feeling that because those emotions have been like locked in your body, and something triggered it just to open it up and let it out, and you feel so much better afterwards. And that was like the beauty of, I think, Final Space is there's some moments in there that that always catch me, just in a certain way. And it just kind of opens up. And I think that's the hope. That's the dream, that you can make something that connects with people, that really hits them on an emotional level and makes them laugh, makes them cry, makes them like get inspired to do their own thing. And I hope that's the case. I hope a lot of people that watch Final Space can look back and say, hey, man, I really want to make my own cartoon. I really want to do my own thing. And hopefully, by learning and seeing the mistakes that I've, barreled through because nobody told me otherwise, that you're able to adapt, overcome, and face these problems in a more meaningful way, having a little bit of knowledge under your belt. Yeah. And that's all really what I want to do is like, I want to kind of help other creators, and I want to do my own stuff too. Now with all this knowledge, I'm more confident in myself of like, I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I know that my instincts are right when it comes to those stories. The question is, how do you get past the layers upon layers of notes and networks and all this stuff? How do you get past that? That's the quest, like that's part of the problem solving. And sometimes it totally messes it up. And guess what? All the spotlight, all the rage comes to you. And then how do you deal with that? And look, I'll admit firsthand that, top of season one or season one, man, that was a really tough time when that was airing and people were just like, this sucks, like what? And then you see it go on Netflix and people just love it. And you're just like, what the freak happened? Like, what? I don't understand it. And then season 2, we hate it. It's like, no, like what the freak? It's like you tried your best and the version in the back of your head was better, but you couldn't get that out because you were prevented from doing so. And guess what? They don't see it as a network thing. They see it as you. Yeah. They don't see the other writers. They see you. They don't see anything else but you. Yeah. And then at the top of season 3, you start getting the feedback and stuff, and you just like sometimes you give in to your weakest emotion of just like feeling something, and I'll never apologize for feeling something, because that you shouldn't apologize for expressing an emotion for something that you're passionate about, and that's for everybody. The things that you work on, the things you're passionate about, the art, the music, the anything that you're passionate about, you should never apologize for getting emotional about it or feeling sad that somebody doesn't like it. Like, dude, you spend a lot of time and effort and energy and passion into putting this thing in there. Now, how you express that emotion is another question, and I felt like, for the obstacles that I faced, that I tried to do in the best way possible. I tried to communicate with people in the best way possible. I had to run the social media network, like stuff. You might have to do that one day. If I can make a recommendation, don't. It is too much for a creator to do that and do their show.
Yeah,
and it will take every aspect of enjoyment, of passion, and it will strip it away, because you're having to be somebody that has to do a job that you never signed up for. So if I had to say anything, if you have to run your social media thing, just don't. Just kind of, if it means, nobody watches it, nobody watches it. But I will tell you right now, as somebody that tried with every ounce of his being to keep that social media growing, and dude, it grew. It freaking grew.
No, it's massive.
It did grow. And it grew on bootstraps. I didn't have any money. Every once in a while I'd try to like boost a post with like $50. Like if it was like a trailer, I'd boost it $50. I'd throw it in there with my own money, And I think that's you got to start really thinking about the stuff that you're creating is there's such a mental health game to doing it that I don't think a lot of people are discussing. But what I've found that has really been helping me is, dude, I've just been, for the first time in a long time, focusing on myself, trying to fill my creative cup back up, working out, been freaking, writing other stuff, been kind of, starting to come up with other ideas, starting to kind of really, focus on the next evolution of Olan. What does that look like?
Yeah.
And a lot of the times you're going to have to do that. And, you don't get to the point creatively where your whole essence, your soul, is your soul cup, whatever we want to call it, is empty.
Yeah.
I hit that point in May. It is a rough point, and you got to climb your way back out of it. It's like, you realize it's like, there's nothing left,
right.
There really is. And there wasn't, that was the point. And that's the thing. There's so many creators, that I think, it's easy to kind of look at certain things and complain about certain things, but there's also, you're never going to get be handed the hand that you want, even if you get a place that you want. There's so many different aspects about making TV that's really difficult. And sometimes, the best thing that you can do is just do the work. But at the same time, you got to focus on your mental health, keep positive, keep focused, go do things, go play games, break away from that. I will say this is one of the warning shots across the bow. Do not run your show's social media pages. All right. I don't care. Look, I've done it. You can grow it. Yeah, I promise you will. You'll grow it. I've edited so many trailers. I've probably edited over 100 trailers. Not even joking, not even exaggerating at this point. I've edited so many trailers that you haven't seen, trailers that got notes on, past, like just trailers. I can't do anymore. Like I'm just like so fatigued on doing it. I'm so fatigued on running that stuff, and that's not your job. It's just
not why you're there.
So your job is just to tell stories, and unfortunately, Hollywood isn't the best place to kind of get your full vision across. So you gotta kind of get really creative, and you got to get kind of scrappy. You really got to get scrappy. So if there's any advice I can give you, it's that. Hopefully that helps. Hopefully you guys stick around for, if it's not Final Space, it's something else. If not, that's fine. I appreciate the journey. Appreciate you guys listening to Gabe. Appreciate Gabe for making these things.
Heck yeah.
You're a rock star. Nobody paid Gabe. Gabe did it out of the kindness of his heart. Same thing of, running social media. I didn't get 1 cent from running social media, but I did it for 2 years. What was
the comment? You get those comments off. There's whatever the Final Space intern running this account is, and it's me, Olan.
Yeah. It's like, I wish. But it's like,
yeah. Thank you.
You're a rock star, man.
Thank you, man.
Seriously, thank you for doing this stuff. And man, you've done it since season 1. Nobody told you to do it. You just did it. And the cool thing is, whenever you really connect with somebody, like me and you have talked and text and talk about different projects and stuff like that. And I feel like out of this whole process, I've kind of gained a friend.
Absolutely. Same feeling here.
Yeah. Throughout the years, whether it's Final Space, whatever it is, I think this is like, it's cool to connect with people over something that we're passionate about. And we were both passionate about Final Space for 5 years, and like it's cool to talk to you. It's cool to kind of see your growth as a creator. You're about to shoot another short film, which is awesome. And I think it's just like it's cool to see other creators in different parts of their journey, and if there's anything I can do to help dude along the way, just let me know.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being definitely a friend and a mentor. I mean, like you said, we've talked a lot. I've learned a lot, and I'm really excited to continue to beyond Final Space, grow our relationship, and just thank you so much for being a part of this podcast and really giving. Not only the fans definitely are getting some really cool insights into this world that you've created, but me too. I mean, I love sitting down and hearing from you. I see the episodes and been blessed to be able to see them. A lot of them early this season was really, really cool. But to just sit down and hear the processes behind it and what you did and how the story came to be, it's really an honor. Thank you so much for this opportunity. And thank you everyone listening. I really hope this was a great experience and awesome to listen to, week after week as we broke down these episodes. And of course, Olan and I aren't going anywhere. We're still working together on some stuff and staying in touch. So sans any Final Space news, you can still catch us doing different things at our respective social handles. So he's at Olan Rogers. I'm at Gabriel W. Jones on social media. Please continue to support the podcast wherever you're listening. It really means a lot to us. And follow all of our social channels for news during hiatus season. Once again, don't know what's coming, but we'll definitely be posting stuff. And so stay tuned after this for our very last Into Final Lingering Thoughts. It's a great one as always. We had a really great fan on. And for our last time this season, I just want to say thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time on Into Final Space. Thanks, guys.
Peace.
And we're still here. Thank you for holding on and tuning into our very last Into Final Lingering Thoughts. We have fans enter online and randomly selected 3 to join us on these last few episodes of Into Final Thoughts and ask any lingering questions to the man himself, Olan Rogers. In our last episode, we're joined by Daniel. Daniel, please introduce yourself and tell us a bit of why you love Final Space.
Hey, everyone. As you know, my name is Daniel. I'm so grateful to be given this opportunity to speak with you guys. Final Space is a really dear show to me. It's a really different show because I really love sci-fi. I love how all the characters are so relatable. We have Gary, Mooncake, Quinn. It gives like a new spice and life to like cartoons and animation in recent times. So I just love how different Final Space is, how the characters, like the storytelling and everything is just perfect. So yeah, it's a really dear show to me.
Awesome.
For sure. Yeah.
Well, thanks for watching.
And Daniel, you've got 3 questions, so let's just dive into the first one.
Okay, so my first question for you, Mr. Rogers, is what was the inspiration for creating Invictus?
Invictus, yeah, that's a good question. I think I really wanted to kind of have a ultimate bad. I loved kind of basically having the Lord Commander be this more of a threat to the crew, but then having this universal threat throughout space. I just always really loved that idea. And I kept toying around with, the idea of having it be this physical entity. And I don't know, there's something cool about just having this thing be composed of this mysterious energy, that's set in like the end of space. And it's like, what is it? It's just an anomaly. And there's so many things in the vastness of space that we still can't explain. And so it felt like this is a really interesting idea to kind of, put a voice, to put a face to this. And it's kind of evolving and adapting to the surroundings that it's in. So it just felt like a cool approach, at least in my eyes. People might disagree, but I really like the idea of having a universal threat that was just kind of more composed of this ethereal energy.
Yeah.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, and Daniel, why don't you hit your second question, another question about Invictus.
Mm-hmm. So now, with this whole situation that you wanted to create this big bad, so now my question is, how do you speculate that we're going to be able to defeat Invictus? Like how? Because I feel like the way the characters are, the only character that, in my opinion, can really step up to Invictus is maybe um Ash, because she's the only one with powers. So like how are the normal characters going to step up to him now that he has like broken into the whole world and he's like just destroying everything?
Yeah, it's always kind of interesting, kind of seeing the good guys a little bit outmatched. And I always kind of like that in any kind of story that I've watched or read books of, especially like Lord of the Rings, when you felt like Aragon and Gimli and Legolas were kind of outnumbered on the two towers, and like how are they going to get out of that situation? And I always kind of liked the good guys being that overmatched kind of in that situation, and there is a way to obviously beat Invictus, and I've had a way in my head of how it would play out, and I definitely see that it's. And obviously I don't want to give anything away or anything like that, but I feel like it's definitely something that, we basically stack the deck in the bad guys corner. So you would be thinking that, like, how are they going to get out of this situation? That's exactly where we want you to be thinking, because it's something where if you feel like oh, but they're going to easily defeat this guy or easily defeat this bad guy, then it feels like we probably didn't do our job very well. But yeah, I think we want to have a bad guy that feels like, how the crap are they going to get out of this situation? Like, oh no, when you see Invictus break out of it, you're like, these guys are screwed. Like, there's no way they can get out of this situation. And that's kind of what we were, trying to go for. So I think the way that you're feeling is the way that we want you to feel.
That's perfect. This is why Final Space is the best show. All right. Now for my third question. Any real life experiences or scenarios that you use to influence certain characters or their relations with other characters?
Yeah. I always draw a lot from real life, and I think even David does too. There's certain lines and there's certain kind of motivations and there's certain kind of scenes that are pulled directly from real life. And that's really, I don't know of a writer that wouldn't do that. Like it's just something where they kind of channel all those kind of negative thoughts and the positive things of their life and the negative, and they just kind of pour it into the writing. And it could be that, somebody, kind of just betrayed you, and maybe they were a friend at one point, but they just can't see anything other than the monster that they think that you are. And you probably in your head aren't this monster, but they just like it. There's just some people that just hate other people, and there's friendships that kind of get fractured and break apart. There's parents that, abandon their children, or there's funerals where people say something really powerful in those kind of, eulogies. So there's so many different things to pull from life. And it could just be, David, for example, went to a funeral and heard something really powerful in this funeral. And it was basically the line, "It's good enough for me," and it was just kind of something like, we talked about it over and over again. It's like, dude, let's just put it in this thing, because that's really powerful to have a father kind of say that to their son, and I've always had my dad said something like that, not so poetic as that, but he was like, you can be whatever you want to be. You can do this, you can do this, you can do this. But like, basically he would say, if you did your best, it's cool by me, and I think that's a really, kind of personal real life experience that we were able to put into the show. And there's so many other like lines that people attach to, and it comes from a real life experience or an emotion that you like. The reason why it hits really hard is because it's coming from a real spot. You know what I mean? Like, so when you're watching the show and there's like a really deep emotional moment, it's there because there's somebody fueling it, whether it be the writing, whether it be the music, whether it be the directing, whether it be the boarding. It all comes together. Everybody's putting their emotions and their energy into these scenes and these moments. So yeah, you have to draw from those real life experiences.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Daniel, thank you for those exceptional questions. Thank you for being a fan of the podcast and for coming on the show and talking about Into Final Lingering Thoughts. And thank you for tuning into the very last episode of Into Final Lingering Thoughts. And we'll see you next time, Fantrexians.
Yes.